3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Secrets of Effective Time Management. Happy you guys could join us for this week's installment of our Improving Talks series. Before we dive into the topic at hand, I do want to highlight that we have some great talks coming up in the weeks ahead. So next week we have Karate, More Than API Testing by Scott Thompson. I've seen a preview of that talk and it's pretty interesting. So definitely recommend it. Robin Fuentes tackles why UX matters on December 3rd. Taking a week off there for Thanksgiving, but picking up the first week of December. So she's very accomplished in all things that she does. So be very interesting to hear her speak on those matters. And then on December 10th, we have TTD for People. For those who are not aware, that is test-driven development. Daniel Scheffler will be talking to us about that on December 10th. So 3 great topics for you to check out. Those are all live right now on our improving.com virtual-events page. So please check that out, sign up for those that you're interested in, and bookmark that page. We're always loading up new talks for the coming weeks. So check back in. There's probably something you'll find interesting and something to check out and spend your lunch hour with us. They are always virtual. They are always free. So please invite a friend and come join us. So a little bit about me. My name is Mark Runyon. I am a director of consulting out of our Atlanta office here at Improving. I enjoy writing outside of speaking as well. I am a contributing writer for both InformationWeek and the Enterprises Project. I have an article publishing next week on how leaders can become better listeners. Pretty much around active listening is kind of the core topic there. So check that out if you're interested in. This morning I spoke actually had a pre-recorded session at the PASS Summit on the countless benefits of mentoring. So that is out there and available if you are interested. Check that out. Outside of that, I do coordinate this Improving Talk series. I work with some individuals here locally through our Path Coaching Initiative. I'm the technical lead on a team of 11. And last but not least, I am a husband and a father of 2. That is all just meant to tell you that I have a lot of irons in the fire. So this topic is very central to making all of this happen. And I don't normally post personal pictures in my professional slide decks. This one I made an exception because I spend a large part of my life working. But that being said, I never want to lose track of what I'm working for. Time management can help ensure that that time that is carved out for myself and my family stays that way. And I'm not invading and crushing that work-life balance so that I'm out of kilter, I'm burnt out, I'm getting myself in a bad place. The hope is some of these things can help us overcome some of the challenges that we all face in our day-to-day through time management concerns. So why this topic? Why now? Why are we talking about this? Work from home, very interestingly, has created some interesting dynamics. I've been a big proponent from work from home for long before COVID started. COVID hit and this grand experiment hit all of us, where we're kind of thrown into mandatory work from home. What does that look like? In many cases, those boundaries between our personal and our professional lives become really blurred. There's been a lot of good and bad that have come out of this experiment. A few stats: the average worker saves 8.5 hours a week commuting, less distraction from coworkers, 30 minutes less spent per day talking on non-work topics, 7% of the time less time talking to management. But the flip side of that too is 70% of people rank work social relationships as important to getting things done. So you can see that it's not all positive. Are we giving up important things just so we can maybe be more productive and have less distractions? And kind of the rub of work from home is 45% of people reported working longer hours than they did prior to the pandemic, including nights and weekends. So again, we're not talking complete positives when we discuss complete work from home, and that causes time management problems. A coworker of mine, probably about 2 years ago, asked me to put together basically this talk, wanting to know what's the magic formula, how do I take on all these initiatives and still deliver at a high level? 2 years ago, my answer would have been chaos management. I make the best of all the mess that's going on around me, and I make it work. This past year, I have taken on a lot of increased responsibilities through my position and place here at Improving, and that hasn't worked anymore. I've had to add that structure. I've had to add processes to make sure that I do have everything. I have it tackled, and I can take on these new things that come at me every day. And at the beginning of this year, I got to a place where I'm doing 99 things, but I'm not doing any of them well. I'm not making an impact. I'm stretched incredibly thin. You know, I got to that point where it's like something's got to give. I've got to give some things up, or I have to come at this differently. So kind of all of this congealed together to form this talk. So hopefully we'll find some value here today and add some structure and add some tools where you can more easily handle time and get more out of it. So I will state there's no magic wands here. This is about developing new habits, making tough choices at times, and thinking about things differently. That's kind of the core of all this. So our first question before we even get into how do we solve our time management problems is to ask the question, is time management a problem, the problem at all? This sounds like a very clickbaity type headline, and I'm sure you've seen these kind of things of, you know, time management isn't the solution, but it's actually the problem. And to a degree, I think there is some validity in that statement. You can have the best time management strategies in the world, but if you aren't addressing those underlying issues, you're going to be stressed, you're going to be burnt out. So we need to kind of take a step back. We need to look, what exactly is happening here? And are we solving for the right problem? And we're also, when we talk about these concepts, whether they be alternative approaches or time management techniques, we're going to be hearing a lot of the same concepts sort of echo upon one another. These are common pain points that are going to be coming to light regardless of, you know, what labels we put on them or how we approach it. So something to kind of keep an eye on. So first we have this idea, you know, as we're looking at, say, 3 alternative approaches to time management, we have this first idea of the more time that we make available, the more work we're going to do. And this is that idea is if I'm digging a hole in the sand at the beach, that the ocean, regardless of how shallow or deep that hole is, the ocean's just going to come along and fill it right up. The more time that we free up on our schedule, the more tasks we're going to try to fit into that space. And that should never be our goal. Our goal should be to decrease the load that we have on us, decrease the stress, and resist that impulse just to fill that void and to get it as packed as possible. We want to take the pressure off of ourselves, not just add more onto it. So when we're looking at when we agree to take on a new task, as soon as that agreement is in place, this implied pressure gets put on us. We are expected to deliver on whatever that agreement was that we made. And if we need to break that agreement or if we need to renegotiate it, that's extra stress that gets added on top of us. So we need to think about these things in order of priorities, not necessarily on time. So if your boss hands you a new task, we're not going to push back and just say, I don't have time for that. Let's come at this from a priority perspective. Here's what I currently have on my plate, X, Y, and Z. How would you like me to reprioritize those existing tasks so I can take on this additional thing? Your boss may have no idea you were working on X, Y, and Z, and may now have awareness of that fact and now take this task to someone else because it's not as important as what you already have on your plate. Adding that structure can be kind of critical to being able to handle volume where we don't have capacity to handle that volume. And when there are also things that you want to take on. This is an initiative that I really care about, that I really want to dive into, that I'm passionate about. But we have this really bad problem as human beings of being very optimistic about our capacity, thinking we have more time than we actually do. It can be very helpful to block off your calendar and put all of your to-dos, in their slots and see exactly how much capacity do I have. Am I fooling myself and saying yes to this thing where, that time is just not really there, and I'm going to be stretching myself to the point of breaking just because I had this illusion in my mind that I had more time than I do. Next, distractions. They prevent us from making progress against that source of pressure. So structure is always going to win over willpower, and that could come down to hiding your phone, putting it on the table behind you while you're working. If you have a problem with surfing the web on your laptop, turn off your Wi-Fi. Create 30-minute blocks of time for your team members to come in and ask you questions and get direction on certain things. Schedule 10-minute breaks after meetings. Whatever that structure needs to be for you to minimize those distractions that are constantly kind of invading your space and keeping you on track, figure out what that needs to be to make it work for you. Finally, decisions. I'm sure we've all heard that story about Steve Jobs wearing the same black turtleneck every day to limit his decision fatigue. I think that's taken to the extreme personally, but we each are continually faced with decisions that have important consequences, and we usually have imperfect information to make those decisions, and that causes cognitive overload. And when we have that cognitive overload hitting us, we are likely to make errors. It's going to contribute to our feeling of being overwhelmed. Take the idea of weight loss. Say I make two different statements here. I'm going to make a goal of not eating after 7 p.m. versus the statement, I'm going to limit my snacking after 7 p.m. So our second statement here creates an infinite number of choices. I have to decide, what am I going to eat? How much should I eat? Should I eat at all? Whereas our first statement, basically, there are no decisions to be made. We're not going to eat after 7 o'clock. Narrowing that down and taking decision out of it can be hugely helpful at times. Another way to approach this, outside of the usual time management, is from the viewpoint of a choice management. So I'm sure either you or someone else you've heard make the statement that my time isn't my own. That can be a really frustrating point to be in, because you don't feel like you have control over your time because everybody else wants it. Everybody else needs something from you. But the hard truth is that we often cause our own lack of time due to our choices. So a helpful exercise when it comes to choice management is just to sit down and see how you are spending your time. And by having that awareness can allow you to have some control over it. So for 1 week, just sit down and track your professional and your personal activities and ask yourself these 4 questions. Which of these activities were proactive versus reactive? Was my time spent effectively, and was I engaged at all times? And I do need to note that time spent efficiently and effectively are not the same thing, so don't fall into that trap. Could this task have been delegated? And then lastly, how many times did you say yes when you wish you said no? And I would take it kind of a step further that we don't necessarily even have to say, we can say no, but it's not to shut down the conversation. It's, how can I help you be a facilitator? How can I be an ally to help you out? Something like, I'm booked solid, unfortunately. I can't help you out with that, but let me see if I can find someone who can assist. Being that ally, being that assist to help out, instead of just putting up that brick wall. No, I'm sorry, you need to go away. And I will say, we're going to discuss something called the Eisenhower decision matrix, which really helps us make choices based on our goals, our values, and our priorities. And we'll discuss a little bit more about that in a second. Next, our third one, kind of alternative time management strategy, is attention management. So this is the art of focusing on getting things done for the right reasons, in the right places, and at the right moments. So I'm sure everyone out there has had motivation problems from time to time. There are certain projects, certain things that you just they don't engage you. They don't plug in with you, and you really have to make yourself work to start that project, or to continue that project, or to make real progress. And for those, when we hit that wall, that motivational slog, we need to ask ourselves, you know, why am I doing this? What is my motivation here? So take this presentation. At the core, I enjoy speaking. This is something I do find enjoyable. I have 3 presentations that I regularly give at conferences, but I haven't developed one in a year. So I was kind of due. I was kind of antsy to create a new thing to talk on. And this is a topic that's been kind of near and dear to my heart most of the year, because it's been a real pain point that I've had to solve. So part of that is, you know, what have I learned? How can I share? How can I give this information back? And if I trace that path all the way down, I find my core motivation. Here's why I want to tackle this presentation. Here's why I want to get into it. Here's why I want to pick this up instead of binge watching whatever the latest series on Netflix or HBO is. So try to find that core, trying to figure out what that is. And we have to view productivity as a means to an end. You know, willpower is very necessary when productivity is the goal. But if we shift that and we say, well, why are we excited about this project, or who's going to benefit from it? You're going to be naturally pulled into that, whatever that project is, through intrinsic motivation, and not because I have to will myself to actually doing it. So if we look at our top statement here, when things are done for the right reasons, the right places, and the right moments, we have to tackle that question of when. When are we going to do this thing that we need to do? Daniel Pink, in his book When, looks at this concept of looking at our circadian rhythm to figure out when is the right time for you to do your productive and your creative work. Those are 2 very, very different things that a lot of time management systems kind of tackle as one. We need to recognize that our body doesn't necessarily work in a rhythm that's going to work well for both of those. So say you're a morning person. Your internal clock is going to make sure that you should probably be doing your more analytical work in the mornings when you're getting started. Maybe have your busy work at lunchtime, and then at the end of the day, we're doing more of our creative thinking. So it's this point of rearranging your schedule to align with your internal clock. We're noticing that the order of tasks that works best for us, and we're adjusting our scheduling accordingly. And then finally, this idea of distractions being evil. That's a tough one, because we obviously get enjoyment out of going on our phones, scrolling through our social media feed, whatever our method of relaxation and leisure is. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We just need to be very thoughtful about the timing of those distractions and their overall purpose. So, you know, again, it's good to cut loose, it's good to relax, but we need to put guardrails on that time. Decide maybe scrolling through mindlessly isn't the best use of our time, but maybe answering an email from a friend, maybe that does kind of align with where we're trying to go. So just kind of thinking through these things a little bit deeper. So looking at time management by the numbers. So 82% of people do not have a time management system currently. 49% of people have never carried out a time audit on how they spend their time. 91 minutes is the average amount wasted each day on meetings or activities that aren't important to your role. And 2 hours can be saved every day by spending 10 to 15 minutes planning out your day. So by looking at the aggregate of these numbers, it can help us understand where we're at. You know, what challenges are we facing? This is a pretty pervasive problem that kind of all of us are dealing with. I mean, just take that third number right there. Imagine if you could wrestle back an hour and a half out of your day wasted on unimportant meetings and other roles you're plugged into. That's 7.5 hours per week. We're going to discuss that one, and hopefully we can come out of here with a little progress on that. No conversation about time management would be complete without discussing that huge elephant in the room of digital distraction. Researchers have shown that the mere presence of a phone makes people less productive. Students that were interrupted while studying take longer to learn the material and they feel more stressed. From an email perspective, 51% of people look at their email once every 20 minutes. And the consequences of kind of all of this digital distraction is, you know, workers will typically attend to a task for about 3 minutes before switching to something else, usually a Slack message coming in, an Outlook email, but it takes up to 20 minutes to get back to that previous task. So we can see that the digital side of our daily work life is a huge distraction and keeping us from being focused, from being productive. And it pays to, you know, look at that. You know, what's happening here? What is this hold that our digital media has over us? To a degree, it's that feeling of FOMO, of missing out on something, or FOBO, the feeling of a fear of missing better options. If I don't respond quickly enough to this emails, you know, somebody else might get out of doing some work that I could have, or whatever it be. It becomes this kind of obsessive compulsive loop that kind of controls us and pulls us in. And we've got to figure out how to break that and how to distance ourselves so we can get that focus and we can plug in. And then next, before we kind of look at time management techniques, we have to get organized. I've highlighted a few things here of what I do, and this is not to say that this is how things should be done, but just to give you some ideas on how you might approach this and what might work best for you. So for me, I have like an Evernote type application that's called Simple Note, where I have a note for every person that I interact with, for every project that I'm working on, for every feature, for every day of the week, for an upcoming view of, you know, all the things that I have coming up in the weeks ahead. It is massive organization. Take it from the interacting with other people thing. For me, that's challenging. You know, having communication with dozens of people each week, it's hard to keep track of everything. Where did we land on that last topic? What were the follow-throughs? What do we need to discuss next time we're together? Did they mention they were going on vacation? Let's follow up on that. You know, how was that vacation to St. Augustine? What did you guys do? It can be really easy to not remember all those important details if we aren't being super organized and a little bit anal about keeping all those details in a place where we can, 5 minutes before that meeting, we can do a quick refresher so that we go in and we are as productive as we possibly can and come out of it with our takeaways and some action items. With email, automation is your friend. So your email box is probably like mine, and it's filled with stuff that you don't care about. Unsubscribe, tag it as spam, get that crap out of there. From the standpoint of automation, you know, set up rules to take those non-priority messages and stick them in folders. They're always going to be there for you. So make a rule that at the end of the day, we're going to check in on those folders, or maybe there's certain folders you check on once a week. That that non-essential, those non-essential emails should not get our time in the middle of the day when we need to be hyper focused and locked into what we're doing. And sometimes if Outlook is a real pain point for you, just set certain hours where we're just going to turn Outlook off. It's not going to be on. Our coworkers know that we need this 3-hour stretch of time at the end of the day to be our most effective and most productive, and we're going to be turning Outlook off. So that's the standard we set. That's the expectation that we're gonna put into place. Our calendar can be really helpful to designate time blocks for productivity in your to-dos. You know, put all those things on there that we need to get done today, and show us where those focus is, and show us where we can really get our productivity within that day. And back to our 91 minutes of unproductive meetings and things we really shouldn't be in. I've had some success with this of basically, I mean, you know, you're not going to miss anything in that meeting. You and I both know that. It can sometimes come down to just the sales job, just reaching out to that project manager, project leader, whoever's calling that meeting, and just saying, hey, I'm not really contributing anything to this meeting. We're not making progress, any additional progress with me being in it, but I do have these other very high priority items on my plate that I can be making progress on if you free me up to focus on these things. And I will be available for you. You can, reach out to me after that meeting with any follow-up questions. I'm welcome to answer, or if within that meeting time block, you're, within that 30 minutes or whenever you're meeting, I will be available. So if you do need to reach out to me 15 minutes in and ask me a critical question, I'll be happy to jump on. But as you can see, now we've at least saved 15 minutes out of our day that, we're not in that meeting. I'm not saying this is always gonna work. Our goal here is to try to recover that 90 minutes. The worst thing that can happen is they say no, but at least we've tried, and I will tell you more often than not, your try will probably be successful. Slack and Teams, setting yourself as away during certain points of the day, kind of like shutting your email off. You can kind of set that status, set that tone that I need this time to focus. I need this time to be productive. Smartwatch, this can go kind of both ways. It is, it is digital distraction in its own as well, but it can, for some people, it can be less intrusive. If I have my smartwatch on and it buzzes me, I can choose to glance at it and keep going on my day, or I'm not really taking a special action. I'm not picking up my phone. I'm not opening up a new application. I'm not making an extra effort when it comes to my smartwatch. But that's me. For some other people, it's just another form of digital distraction, and that ding breaks their rhythm, and that's kind of what we're going against. So you kind of know where you fall on that, flip of the coin. So again, these are all just suggestions. The whole goal here is just to get you thinking. There is no one-size-fits-all approach on getting organized, but the hope is you start kind of thinking through this, working through some of these things and figuring out what works best for you. So our focus when we talk about time management techniques, we're going to actually focus on three different techniques: the Eisenhower matrix, the Pomodoro technique, as well as time boxing. And these all kind of complement one another. It's not like we're doing one in place of the other. You have to choose one over the other. They are very complementary and can be used together. So first we have our Eisenhower matrix. I'm sure most of you probably figured out it is named after our 34th president. But a few of you may be wondering, I don't really know anything about Eisenhower. What exactly did he accomplish? Why should I be concerned with what his method was? Well, it turns out that he was president a long time ago, from 1953 to 1961. So it was probably not in a lot of our focal path, but he actually did accomplish a lot, from the construction of the interstate highway system. He created NASA during his term. He ended the Korean War. Alaska and Hawaii both became states under his watch. The Cold War with Russia stayed cold. And he also signed in the first piece of civil rights legislation since the Civil War. So he had a lot on his plate. He had a lot going on. And this is his method for keeping focus on what matters. And this top statement right here kind of gets at our problem. Research has shown that our attention is drawn to time-sensitive tasks over tasks that are less urgent, even when that less urgent task offers greater rewards. So our focus really should be on that greater reward, but the urgency kind of takes over, regardless of if that's helpful or not. So by dividing our task load up into these 4 different quadrants, we can really understand where should my focus be and where should I be plugging in my time. So our first quadrant up there, the urgent and important, those are things like a last minute deadline has been assigned to you. I'm having car troubles this morning. I can't get to work. I'm filling in for a coworker who's sick. These are things that we have to do now. They have to be completed immediately. Or today. They tend to be the unexpected, deadline-driven issues. We don't want to live in this quadrant. In this quadrant, we're playing firefighter. We are putting out those fires. When we do spend too much time here, it can lead to stress and to burnout, and those feelings that we're not in control. That's not a good thing. We want to. This is always going to be a part of our lives. It just doesn't need to take over our lives. Doing so can sort of rob us of our energy and our passion. So our next one, if we shift to the right, is those things that are not urgent, but they are equally as important. It's that thing I have to get done next week. It may move into focus as important or urgent. It's just not there today. And these things tend to be things we can schedule on our calendar. These tend to be not focused so much on the problems, but more so the opportunity and our areas for growth. We're being proactive here and prioritizing opportunities to grow ourselves. So these things allow us to accomplish meaningful goals. And if we do this right, we actually decrease the number of problems that might show up in our first quadrant, say going into Q1. We're laying that groundwork, we're making that foundation. These are things like project planning, doing maintenance, going to networking events, doing exercise, learning a new tech skill. This is the quadrant we really kind of is healthy. That's what we want to stay in as much as possible. Next, we have the things that are urgent and not important. I need to check my phone or my email. Some meetings we go to. Can we automate some of those processes to unclutter our inbox? Can we delegate certain things to other people to get it off of our plate? Maybe I have this assignment to write this nasty SQL query that's going to take me the entire day. But if I go to my good friend Preston over here, he can knock this thing out in an hour. That makes a lot more sense than me burning my entire day. And then hopefully I can repay the favor at a later date. Delegation makes a lot of sense in that place. Finally, we have the not urgent and unimportant. These are the things that can just go away. That task project can be deleted. It's not in the critical path. It really shouldn't have our focus. Leisure time falls into this, and that is important, but it should be intentional. It shouldn't be getting in the way of these more critical items that we really need to be focusing on. We don't need to be binge watching our TV series at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday. That's our work time. We need to be focused, keep our focus where it should be. So the keys here are the urgent matters require immediate attention right now. There are usually consequences if they're not completed in that timely fashion. These tend to be unavoidable tasks. The important matters, they contribute to our long-term goals. They add value to our life. They do require planning and thoughtful action. So we should approach them as such. This idea of the Pomodoro technique is our second time management technique. And through this, we are looking to increase productivity and increase our focus. So it's pretty basic. It's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot to get tangled up with here. It's really focused around short bursts of work where we are looking to make as much progress as we can. And it's still a sense of urgency within our day so that we don't get to the end of the day and it's gotten away from us and we haven't accomplished anything. So we're basically going in 25-minute bursts and making as much progress as possible on whichever these priority items that we have elevated for the day. And then after that, we take a 5-minute break, get up, take a breather, reset your mind. The key there is just to ward off exhaustion. We don't want to be doing those 4-hour blocks. We never look up from our computer and we just feel spent after, at lunchtime. We do want to give ourselves that break. We do need to reload. We do need to, maybe we're stuck on a problem. We need to reset. We need to get our mind off of it a little while so we can come back and view it in a new light, get some new thoughts going. And then finally, after we've done 4 of those Pomodoro back to back, then we're going to take a 15 to 20-minute break to give ourselves, a little bit more breathing room. But really the key here is we're trying to work with the time that we have instead of working against it. If we have, like I mentioned before, if we have all day to work on, say, a project, we're going to fall prey to distractions. That's going to keep us from focusing. So we mentioned it before, structure always defeats willpower, and this technique adds that structure, and it is super easy to implement. You can get a Pomodoro timer for your phone, Focus Keeper for the iOS, Pomodoro timer Lite for your Android. This is super easy to implement. And the key here, you'll notice, is we're trying to cut down on interruptions. If I'm getting emails coming in, then I'm pretty much ignoring them until the beginning of my next cycle. That's my routine. Again, you figure out what works best for you, but we are isolating those interruptions so that they're not just invading our productivity just randomly throughout the day. We're also stopping multitasking. That timer instills that sense of urgency. So we really want to focus on the task at hand and not be working on 4 different things and not really being effective at any one of them. And it can be also really helpful if you record, what you were doing in each one of these cycles to see how you're spending time from each day. And where was your focus? What was the bulk? It adds that awareness. Again, that awareness is key to understanding how we're spending our time and are we spending it effectively. The downside, I'm sure you've already figured out, is life doesn't necessarily work in 25-minute bursts. Sometimes I have an hour meeting. I can't just say, sorry team, got to go take my 5 minutes. This is my break time. It's not going to go over too well. Maybe your team is more flexible and forgiving than mine, but it's not going to land well. So during those times, basically, I just put the timer on hold. I go to my meeting, and then I pick back up with my rhythm after that. And I have to say, once you're in the rhythm, you feel good. When you're having to take breaks from the rhythm, it's hard to kind of get yourself back in the mindset. So that is definitely a challenge with this approach. So our third strategy here is time boxing. Those in the Agile software development world are probably fairly familiar with this concept. If we're looking at it from the Agile perspective, we're doing things like we're going to have a 15-minute Scrum every day, and Scrum is not going to last more than 15 minutes. If we're doing sprint planning, it's going to run 2 hours, and we're going to make sure it never runs over that. A sprint review would only run an hour. So in the context of Agile, some people may already be aware of this concept, but it is very calendar driven. So we're setting fixed amounts of time that we're going to work on whatever this task is at hand. And to do that, we need to take a quick look at this task, do a rough assessment of how long it's going to take, and block off our time accordingly. And once we block that time off, we're treating that like a meeting. When it's time to start that task, we start that task. We arrive, we show up, we are ready to be productive on that, whatever that is. If it's a big task, we may need to split it into several blocks of time. Maybe we have a week-long project. We're going to have to divide that time throughout the week to get all those necessary blocks in. But the key here is we're making little steps along the way, and steps that we can feel really good about our productivity, and we can work in a more focused way, that we know this is a 10-hour project and we've already knocked out 2 hours of it, so we can feel good about that accomplishment, that progress that we've made. For the procrastinators out there, it also forces you to start. There's a psychological phenomenon where that when we start tasks, we feel the need to finish them. Think about a bad movie that you watched. You probably watched that thing through to the end because you have this need inside you to find out, how did this thing finish, regardless of how bad it is. Same thing. So the biggest challenge when it comes to procrastination can just be getting started and taking that first step. And at the end of the day, we are hoping to organize ourselves better. When we have that organization, we have complete control over our schedule. We can think through in advance, where are we putting our time? Where are we putting our focus? And feel like we have control over that situation. A few things to think about in this regard would be isolating email to like the last 30 minutes of your day, or say if we are calling a meeting, going into that meeting with very tight time constraints of this is when this meeting is going to start and this is when it's going to end. Here's the agenda, we're sending it out ahead of time. Also, here's what we're looking to get out of that meeting. Here's the desired output, so that we know if we've accomplished our goal. We know we have this much time to devote to this topic with the group, and we know if we're actually making progress on our end deliverable or not. So this is all great and all, kumbaya moments and everything else. But at the end of the day, if you walk out of here and you're like, that's a good talk, and don't actually implement anything, then you're probably not going to accomplish much. We need to form some new habits. Half of our daily habits are driven through repetition. The key to developing and keeping new habits is incremental progress and dedicated commitment. So these habits that we have are very ingrained in our lives, and it feels really weird not to do them. Like brushing your teeth in the morning. My wife goes for her walk when I finish up my day. She feels strange when she doesn't get that time and she doesn't do that. And some people may have told you that 21 days to develop a new habit. That's wrong. That's a huge oversimplification. It varies from person to person and from activity to activity. If I want to create a new habit of eating chocolate every day, I guarantee you it'll only take me a day to start that new habit. That's not a tough one. But if I'm starting a new running routine, if I'm training for that marathon, it's probably going to take me more than 21 days before I'm in the groove and I feel comfortable and I want to get out there every day. As we talked about before, it can be really helpful to block off your time. Start slow, realize your limitations, and don't try to get too ambitious when you're first starting. We need to stay motivated. We need to understand the why. Why do we want to do this? What is our internal motivation? And we need to understand our roadblocks. Have we tried to do this in the past and we stopped? Why aren't we regularly practicing this behavior? What can we do differently this time to find success where we failed before? And it's easy to get discouraged, when we miss a day of our workout routine or results don't come as quickly as we had hoped. It's easy to be like, oh, this isn't working, I'm wasting my time. But none of us are perfect. These things take longer than you plan. And it's a matter of seeing it through. If we fail today, tomorrow's a new day, we can start fresh and find a new way of our new chance of finding success. And lastly, it can help to pair an activity that you really want to do with one that you prefer not to do. So say cleaning the house. I don't think that's anybody's favorite activity, maybe some, but maybe you really like to listen to a podcast each week. If you compare those two things together, then you can make some accomplishment while listening to your podcast and doing your chores around the house. Can be helpful to find those things together. And as kind of a final thought, while you're scoping out new habits, regular sleep, exercise, healthy diet, and mindfulness can improve our work, our relationships, our mental health. So see if you can find ways to adopt some of those habits as well, which will kind of have ripple effects through all other things to assist you. So our last real content slide here is around decluttering your life. This actually came from a TED Talk that I heard 6-9 months ago, called The Art of Not Giving a. I will let you finish the thought on your own. It was a very interesting take that's not necessarily in the professional context, but it's more about taking control of your life in general. So this idea of mental decluttering, clearing out the annoy to make room for the joy. We all have things that we care about in our life. These are things we spend time, energy, and money on. And we have things that we don't really care about, which we also spend time, energy, and money on. We need to shift the focus to focusing more on those things that we care about and less on the ones that we don't. So in my life, that is like children's birthday parties. On the one hand, I definitely want my children to go to their friends' birthday parties, have a good time. I don't necessarily want to be there. So the arrangement I've made with my wife is, I will cover at least my half, but as long as you agree that if the Georgia game is on, you're going to let me sit at home and watch my game and not have to go be doing something that I don't want to do at the children's party. So that's an arrangement that works for us. I'm sure you have your own arrangements, but it can come down as simple as like, no thanks, I can't make that dinner party. It's just not something I'm interested in, but not something that I want to devote my time, energy, and money to. And some of you may say, well, that sounds like you're just being a jerk. The key here is being honest and polite, because when we are wasting our time, energy, money over this commitment that we never wanted to make, it can be draining. We're trying to find ways to weasel out of that commitment. We're worried about being seen as a jerk for backing out at the last minute. When we're honest, when we're polite, and we make those statements like, no, thank you, I don't have time, I can't afford it, I don't want to. We are being honest. We are approaching it in the right light with that other person, and we are getting that time back in our lives that we would have lost otherwise. So again, just kind of a tack on thought to kind of close us out. That's so a little bit out of the scope of what we're doing, but I thought it had enough value that we should dive into it. So that concludes us. 4 references for you. This slide deck will be available on my Twitter feed. I am at ASP Programmer. Very old school, I am aware, but that's the handle I landed on about 10 years ago. So it should actually be there now. I think I had it set up to schedule post. This presentation will be on YouTube starting early next week. I think Justin might be able to, our moderator might be able to post you a link before we are closed out here. Feel free to check in, maybe review anything that you might have missed, and that might be helpful to you. We didn't talk about much about delegation. I think it probably doesn't apply to everyone, but for those that it will, it can be a huge help in your time management day, and it can be a huge help to those you're delegating to. That may seem strange, but wrote an article for Enterprisers Project on 5 ways to delegate more that dives into that topic in a much deeper fashion. So please check out that article link. And finally, Stephen Covey, who gave us The Speed of Trust, also wrote a really good book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Included the book link there. Some of those ideas kind of have permeated throughout this presentation. So please check that out as well if you are interested. So finally, I would love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. I am a software architect, so please reach out. And my email, mark.runyon, R-U-N-Y-O-N, @improving.com. If you have questions later in the day, next week, a month from now, as you're implementing your time management strategies, I would love to talk through them with you, see if I can help out in any way, and make this easier for you, make this something that works for you and not against you. So with that said, do we have any questions that I can answer for you right now?
We didn't have any questions. I did post the link if anyone's interested in checking out this recording or any other of our National Lunch and Learn recordings. We post them all on our Improving Enterprises YouTube channel, so that link is in the chat.
Awesome, sounds great. Well, thank you all for attending today. I hope you will check out our future talks, again at improving.com/virtual-talks. And we hope to see you back here next week. So thank you. Have a great weekend.